Good morning, Internet. It is the day we put out honest trailers, which means it's Tuesday. I'm Joe, Dan, Danielle, and managing editor of Fandom, Eric Goldman. Hey, man.
Hello.
Hey, welcome to the thing.
Thank you for bringing me to the thing.
Absolutely. We're talking about some things today. We're going to talk a little bit about Zack Snyder. He said some things and people had some thoughts. Yeah. And we're going to talk about the Avengers posters that came out this morning. Some of them are in color, some of them are in black and white. What does that mean? We'll talk about it, and we're going to talk. We're gonna do a little fan question that we like today. But first, we're going to jump into sweet Zack Snyder. This is via Cinema Blend and the entire internet because it's mostly all anyone talked about yesterday. So, at a recent Q&A following a screening of Snyder's earlier comic book movie Watchmen, the director made it clear that he has little sympathy for people who took issue with his version of the classic DC characters as seen in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, as he feels they made sense for a modern comic book movie. So this is the quote. Someone says to me, why do I just want to read this like a really gruff New Yorker? Like someone says to me, hey. Someone says to me, oh, Batman killed a guy. I'm like, really? I'm like, wake the F up. That's how you do an F word on SJU.
Don't want to get demonetized.
Don't want to get demonetized. I guess
on this, our biggest video.
I guess that's what I'm saying about once you've lost your virginity to this effing movie, and then you come say to me something like oh, my superhero wouldn't do that. I'm like, are you serious? I'm down the effing road on that, and it's a cool point of view. Look, I'm 100% fine. It's a cool point of view to be like, my heroes are still innocent. My heroes didn't lie to America. My heroes didn't embezzle money from their corporation. My heroes didn't commit any atrocities. That's cool, but you're living in an effing dream world, okay?
Can we put up a poll for who lost their virginity to any movie?
So let's So as a quote from a man who loves deconstructed superheroes, let's deconstruct all of that.
Yeah.
Go, Dan, fix it.
Oh, great, me first. Right behind relitigating The Last Jedi, relitigating Batman v Superman is number 2 on my list of things I don't ever want to do.
I have fun with it, so I call it relitigating.
Number 3 is relitigating Man of Steel. So, but what I think this shows is... This is Zack Snyder's philosophy. This is he directed Watchmen. It shouldn't be any shock. Like that's all Watchmen is your heroes aren't heroes. They're flawed, terrible people, and we're gonna take that apart bit by bit. That's what the Watchmen graphic novel was about. Well, the comics / graphic novel. I get corrected on that. Most people read it as a graphic novel. But that's what the movie's about, and that is the sort of mentality that was brought to Man of Steel. Man of Steel. He's a flawed being. That Batman is a flawed character. So that is his worldview. That is the sensibility that Zack Snyder brought to those films. And the eternal conflict is that worldview is not necessarily in line with how many people perceive those characters. And that has been the conflict now for what seems like 10 years in internet time.
So long. And it's there are 2 things I can talk a lot about. I can talk about the formation of the comics code forever, and I can talk about the deconstructionalist period of the late 80s, early 90s in comics.
I think you should do both.
Forever. Well, I can't do it here. We only have like 20 minutes.
Do it for 14 minutes.
No. Yes, and no. But so... As much as I adore that period, and that period is great, that is one of those periods that feels like it needs to be, you have to have the bright and sunny before you can deconstruct it. And I get that we'd already had a lot of Marvel. I think that that's one of the reasons why Watchmen was just before its time. I love Watchmen. I like the movie. I know I'm in the minority on that. I like that movie. I think the director's cut is really good. But it was too early for people to really get it. If Watchmen came out now, it would make more sense. And that has always been the thing I think that a lot of fans have had a problem with, the ones who have had a problem with these Snyder movies, is that first you have to construct the thing before you deconstruct it, especially when you have... DC has some of the most iconic comic book characters ever. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern. And so I know a lot of people say, stop worrying about the Donner years. Donner's gone. We had that. Yes, but if you're doing it for a new generation and you're doing a new generation of movies, I do feel, and and again, this is just my personal opinion, but that's fine. Y'all still yell at me and I don't care. You have to construct the thing before you deconstruct the thing, in my opinion. And I think that's what some of the backlash is. And I appreciate his
Someone can't hire you to
worldview.
build a house and you just show them a pile of smoldering timber.
Yeah.
You're like, I deconstructed your house! Yeah.
It's like, no, but I needed stairs. My child needs a
roof.
bedroom or like a fridge or something. And so I do think that that's a lot of, and I appreciate that that is where he came from. And if you hire Zack Snyder, you should know that that is what he's going to bring to your franchise. Snyder gonna Snyder, and that's okay. That's what he does. But you got to know who you're hiring and what you're hiring them for.
Yeah, I also really like Snyder's Watchmen film as well, but I tweeted out last night, these quotes make me see why, again, Snyder was great for Watchmen, but not so great for Batman and Superman, because I get the appeal. There's a reason that there are always Elseworld stories that are like, what if Batman and Superman crossed these lines? What if they were evil? What if they took a life and all the time? But yeah, that's not at their core what people look to them for. And I saw a lot of people that were saying, yeah, well, this is, and what Snyder was saying is, well, this is the realistic take. If they really existed, this is how they'd have to operate. And which I'm just like, but this is they're these iconic characters and they're make believe, and we want to believe in them in a certain way. And I'm not saying that there's no room for another interpretation, but it just seems so funny that his thing is like, Batman, there's no way around it. If Batman existed, he'd kill. But I'm like, yeah, but Batman doesn't exist because we don't have billionaire vigilantes running around in the street in Batmobiles. So if we're pretending that, why can't we pretend they also don't kill people?
Elon Musk needs a Batmobile, is what
And he will have one.
Is what we've discovered.
Sure.
And he drives
Go to
in
the
his,
moon.
in his little underground subway system that he built under his town
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
The Muskmobile?
Yeah.
I might be the only one at the table. I didn't like the Watchmen movie. I think Snyder gets real hung up on external trappings. Like, that's so sick, and like at the expense of he gets real hung up on the icing at the expense of the cake, if that makes sense. And so I think he really liked the visuals of Watchmen quite a bit, and the darkness and the dreariness and Rorschach breaking fingers and things like that, and sort of missed the point of like what Moore was actually trying to say with Watchmen. And I think that sort of continued with his take on paramilitary Batman and immediately glum and what's the point of it all and humanity sucks Superman. They're shallow takes to me. I'll get yelled at and screamed at, but he's visually an incredible director. I just think that sort of this point of view of like, oh man, I'm so past superheroes being pure. My superheroes lied to America and embezzled money. It's cool that those were the comics that you liked growing up, and if you didn't move past it, cool, I guess, but I don't know.
I do want to see Superman embezzle money. I'm not sure how that would work. I definitely want to see him embezzle some Kryptonian bucks.
Why he would need to, we don't know, but let's just say he did.
Yeah, we all need money. Rent's got to be paid, and journalism is dying.
Yeah.
So
I guess you're living in a dream world. It's like, no, we live in a bad world where everyone does lie and embezzles and commits atrocities on the regular, and we just sort of have to deal with it. And so that's why I like to just close my eyes sometime and have Batman Watusi in. Yeah. Punch somebody and swing me to safety.
And that's the difference, is it can all be about timing also.
Yes.
There are certain cycles that art goes through, that society goes through, that film goes through. There are certain cycles where people want to see their superheroes broken down and deconstructed and brought down to their DNA and completely reinvented. And then there are certain times where people want that aspirational version.
Yeah.
And I think that Snyder sort of straddled the line a little bit, in the sense that like Dark Knight was a bit of It was a little bit of both, actually. I think that Dark Knight both mythologized Batman and deconstructed
I mean,
Batman.
they had him called out for kind of being morally compromised by Lucius Fox in that movie.
Right, yeah, like the Dark Knight trilogy, I should say, kind of did both. It both built the legend of Batman and also broke him apart a little bit. Like, for me, the way that I like Batman, the way that my personal view of the hero is, my favorite Batman moment on film is the end of Batman Begins, when Commissioner Gordon says, I never said thank you, and he says, and you'll never have to. That for me is Batman. But there's other people that go more of a Frank Miller route, and they like the grizzled violence, and that's fine too. But I think there's also there's a zeitgeist that you can tap into sometimes, and sometimes you don't. And I feel like all of the reinventions sort of hit a weird moment where nobody was really sure what they wanted from their superhero movies, and it's and there will never be a final verdict rendered on any of these movies. There will always be people that love Batman v Superman, and there will always be people that really, really, really don't like Batman v Superman, and that's what sort of drives me crazy a little bit. Is like, it seems like there are some people who either love it or hate it that are just seem committed to eternally trying to convince the other side that they're right. And it's like, no, it's a movie. You liked it. You didn't like it. This is where the director is. We know what his psychology is. I think this is just another way to underscore that, like, yes, this is exactly the perspective we knew these movies were made from.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's not. It's an eternal cycle of like, no, see, I'm right. It's like, no, it's you're neither one of you are right.
Yeah. Especially with Batman, who keeps being reinterpreted. I mean, even if the Affleck Snyder version of Batman had been universally loved, nothing's universally loved, but like loved as much as the Nolan Bale version, there'd still be another version after that. That's just how it goes. They're not going to be like, that's it, we're done, we've done the perfect Batman.
Yeah, and to your point about, which this is a great point about knowing the cultural zeitgeist, there's a reason why when things seem kind of dark, musicals get really big, and you start seeing a bunch of musicals come out. There's a reason why these things ebb and flow, and so a lot of people who don't necessarily like superhero movies at all or big blockbusters kind of bemoan that we're doing a lot of that right now, but that this is our version of when they did musicals when everyone was poor or when there was war or whatever. It's because sometimes we just want candy, man.
Yeah,
or Candyman.
Sometimes we just want a remake of Candyman.
Which we're getting.
I guess I just suppose my challenge, I guess, Zack Snyder doesn't need a friggin' challenge. Like, he's
challenging you, man.
I literally don't matter. But like the idea of like, I'm way down the road on superheroes being pure. Like, we all haven't read Dark Knight Returns. Like, wow.
We all read Squadron Supreme.
Whoa,
We all loved it as a kid.
Yeah. It's like, if that is your point of view, then like, what next? Like, push those ideas further instead of just like regurgitating this, like what you pulled out of Frank Miller. Like, I want to push this further. Then what? Like, do they redeem? Like, what do they do? Like that's what I want to see, because it's just the aspect of like, my Batman kills people in prison and lies to America. Like, isn't interesting to me.
This is my fear, though, when you have these directors, and I like Dawn of the Dead a lot. I like 300. I think that there's some very interesting. I'm very split on Watchmen. I'm not an overall huge fan of the film, but I think there's some really great stylistic stuff done with it. Yeah. But this is my fear when you loop in a director like this to these huge franchises, someone like a Rian Johnson or a Zack Snyder, which is that they make a big movie or a few big movies like this, and they spend the rest of their careers litigating it and debating it, and like, I don't give a flying F about Zack Snyder and Batman anymore. Nope. I don't. True. It's done. I want to see what's next.
Yep.
I don't care about Rian Johnson and Star Wars anymore. Nope. I don't. It's over. Move on. What's next? I'm not interested in 10 years down the road still talking about Zack Snyder's take on Batman and Superman. It's done. It's over. Yeah. Wrap it up. It's done.
Give him the light.
Yeah. The movie came out 3 years ago. Everyone's in their camp. The tents are pitched. The fires are lit. Go down the road. We're done.
You know, you do bring up a good point, though, which I will happily put my own foot in my mouth for my talking points today. When you compare him to Rian Johnson, when you put a filmmaker with us, because we talk about that a lot, and I talk about that a lot, so I'll call out me being a hypocrite right now. We talk about let filmmakers make with strong points of view make their movies. Rian Johnson did it. Zack Snyder did it. And yet here I poop on this very strong filmmaker with a very strong point of view. I will absolutely concede to that. Like, can genre films get made by someone with a really strong point of view, or do they need a Feige showrunner?
Of course they can, but you had to be prepared for this. That when you hire a director with an exceptionally strong point of view that's into subversion or a different take on things, then this is what you buy into.
Especially when they take over these huge. When they take over these huge franchise movies. I think this would be a completely different conversation if he had done his own movie, and I think same for Rian Johnson. It would be a completely different conversation if he had done something that was like this. But when you have something that people hold so tenderly, like a Batman, a Superman, a Star Wars, where the fans think we own this thing, then that's where...
Yeah, I feel like it's if Snyder had not been the one to build from the ground up. I mean, Man of Steel was supposed to launch the entire new DCEU. I think, if someone else had done it and people were more like, this is in line with the Batman. I mean, more people, I know some people do love Snyder's version, of course, but if more people felt like this is the traditional Batman and Superman I love, and now they were doing what they seem to be already doing with like the Joker movie being its own standalone thing. If now Zack Snyder said, I'm going to do my Elseworlds take on Batman and Superman, divorced from this other established DCEU, that would be received better. It was just that basically this is our new world. This is going to be the template for everything. And a lot of people were like, I don't like the core of what you're doing, you know? Because I do think, of course, filmmakers should be able to do their own spin on things. And I think that, again, is the appeal of why people like these Elseworlds or What If comics. It can be like, let's just go in a completely different direction.
Well, I'm not saying that a work should never be revisited. That's the great part about film is, yes, of course, that happens all the time. You revisit work. But this idea of just a never-ending cycle of debate and trial. Yes, that happens when a movie comes out, but there needs to be a point at which everyone just sort of resolves that these are the opinions on it, and then let's see what happens with time. Who knows?
Look, to jump in, I think that's part of what makes something like Batman v Superman something that you can't just write off, because it isn't something where it's just like, garbage, don't want to talk about it. Like, the fact that it still elicits emotions 3 years later means that, hit or miss, there's stuff there to talk about. I see where you're coming from, Danielle, about like you have to construct something to deconstruct it, but I feel like Batman, we just came off a period where we constructed Batman better than we ever had in live action. So I feel like Batman is almost like, as a concept, is something that we were culturally familiar enough that deconstructing it right off the bat, on paper at least, didn't seem like it was so much of a stretch. The fact that people are like, this isn't what Batman would do, well, you wouldn't know that if you didn't know who Batman was. So I think Snyder, for me, like, I don't agree with exactly what he's saying, but I don't disagree, because I think the point of Batman v Superman, which I don't think it quite happened, was that was his character arc. We were supposed to start being like, this isn't Batman, that's not right, that shouldn't be it. And by the end, he was supposed to find his humanity. It just didn't work out
And that
way.
is something that I've heard as well,
Right.
that's one of the arguments was, well, yeah, you start at this dark point and then it was going to get lighter, but
They were going to have a dawn of justice. There was going to be a
justice was
dawn of
going to be
justice
done.
promised.
Right.
It's in the title. That's fair. That's fair. Let's touch this too, because we like making fun of Martha stuff. This is from Slashfilm. This is also part of the Q&A. Interestingly enough, Snyder also revealed that at one point they considered making Martha Wayne and Martha Kent the same person. An idea was floated that after Martha Wayne was shot, she didn't die. Instead, she was put into witness protection somewhere in Kansas under also her name, Martha, but Kent instead of Wayne. I would love, because there's crazy stuff that has been talked about, like that was supposed to go into Man of Steel and into Batman v Superman, whatever exists in the completely done and ready to go Snyder cut. I would just watch a documentary of all the, like, here's what didn't make it in. Martha, they were literally, why'd you say that name? Because they literally had the same mom at one point. Like, yeah.
I mean, they do. Older DC does love those, like, black-haired, blue-eyed characters. So I guess, although even Superman is like adopted, but
Yeah.
you know,
I mean,
Can you imagine though?
I want to see it.
It's crazy, and of course you start going down the road of like, well, why would she leave behind her son Bruce and all this? But at its core, it's so crazy. I'm kind of curious about it. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the Abrams Superman script where Lex Luthor was going to be a Kryptonian. It's like one of those. It's like one of those like. Whoa, that is it. And I guess I should say, as someone who will always defend the Mandarin twist in Iron Man 3, I'm not intrinsically against crazy diversions from the lore of the comic books. I don't think that that always necessarily is like, oh no, that has to be done. The plot, the background has to be exactly the same way. This is a big swing, and I can see why they didn't do it. But I'm kind of curious about it.
I would read that Elseworlds comic like crazy. Are you kidding? I loved the nail. I would read that Elseworlds comic. That's amazing.
I do. I love just the concept of early writers' rooms, or just early on in the process, like what's gonna stick,
Right.
in my weird movie. And just in my heart, there's like a whiteboard in Zack Snyder's office where he has Martha Kent and Martha Wayne, and he's just like. Oh my God! Like I never noticed. But yeah, I just love just the weird stuff that would have that didn't stick. And I can't, you can't rip the guy for being like, you were going to do what? Because you throw a lot of refrigerators and kitchen sinks at a script.
You should see the terrible jokes we throw out, Raj.
Yes.
Boy.
Awful.
Yes, you
They're
should.
atrocious.
Yes. They're embarrassing.
They're embarrassingly bad.
Yeah.
No, that's every writer's room. But
Do you picture? I'm sorry.
But we also don't tell people what they were.
Oh, but sometimes we do. Though.
Sometimes we do.
Sometimes we do.
Sometimes we do.
Though.
Sometimes
We have a whole
sometimes
show
we
where
don't.
sometimes.
Yeah, you're right. But the really bad ones we don't.
Yeah.
No.
Don't you
And I
picture-
appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Did you picture that instead of the "why did you say that name" moment, that like if she had just run in Diane Lane at that point and be like, "Boys, stop fighting," they turn in unison and both go, "Mom!" Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Cut to credits. That's what would have been the cliffhanger.
Walking on sunshine.
I would also just watch any scene from that movie recut to Walking on Sunshine.
Oh, yeah.
I think would be phenomenal.
Katrina and the Waves.
Speaking of bad jokes that we write, you have a special opportunity to watch us find out in real time which of those are good and which of those are actually terrible at WonderCon this Friday night at 6:30. I don't remember what room we're in.
It's a big room, apparently.
It's the big room.
It's gonna be really embarrassing if a lot of people don't show up.
We're premiering an honest trailer. I'm very anxious about it because normally two things happen. We work through them very slowly together in a small room, and you never see the garbage. And then we fire and forget them in the internet, and I don't have to look at the comments if I don't want to.
Yeah.
But
It's like stand-up comedy, Joe. You get to see in real time how terrible of a writer I am.
I
very excited.
I love doing an open mic for 2,000 people. So please come. That'll be super fun and very nerve-wracking for us. Then also, please, if you like our show, and this is your first time here, welcome. Subscribe to us. We do a lot of cool stuff here. We do SJU, our weird morning show every morning, but then we also do a lot of fun things. Panel to Screen is a cool one. Charting with Dan is my favorite thing in the world. So I don't know if you're still supposed to hit a bell. I can't keep up with YouTube. Subscribe, hit a bell if you're supposed to. I don't know. Ryan, thumbs up. You're supposed to tell you to hit a bell.
Just hit a bell in general. Even if
Lots
you
of
don't
cool
see one,
stuff.
find a bell.
We
and
have
hit it.
extras if you need
we
one.
have
We
three
have
bells
three.
over there.
Yeah, there's three bells. Yeah. We don't have them set up, but yeah.
Two more down there on the floor.
So many bells. But yeah, just cool stuff from us.
Billy's gone bell crazy.
I could almost do the NBC thing if I timed it right.
It's weird. They all look the same, but they have three distinct tones. It's very odd.
I wanted to carry all the bells for Christmas this year with those bells.
For clarification, earlier I said, does DC need a Kevin Feige? And I didn't mean that because I love Disney and they pay for my house, which they do. I meant that as that's the best example of movies having a showrunner that I can think of, but also all hail our mouse overlords. Speaking of our mouse overlords, the new Avengers posters have finally confirmed who lived and who died. A slew of character posters for Marvel's Avengers Endgame dropped today and confirmed the fate of some characters that were not on screen during the finale of Infinity War. Survivors include Happy Hogan,
We're all relieved.
Valkyrie, Wong, Only for Pepper Potts? I figured you're... Or for Happy Hogan?
Just for Happy Hogan.
Okay, none of these other people?
Nope.
Valkyrie, Wong, Pepper Potts, Dead, Shuri.
We're cycling through all of them.
Oh, we're going through all of them.
Oh, I want to pet that
There's
raccoon.
Wong.
There's Wong.
I
Hey,
did start
buddy.
laughing as I was
Valkyrie.
scrolling through the posters, and I was like, person, 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 person,
Now,
raccoon,
wait,
person,
go back
person,
to Happy
person.
Hogan. It looks like he's got like a sick, just the way that the A is, like a sick tat. Like he just got like a nihilist face tattoo.
Yeah.
I also appreciate that he's doing the
so these
angles
are-
that I do in every photo that I take, where I'm like, you can't see my chin.
Yep.
These are the dead, I assume.
I would have done a full screen Jeremy Renner with his full hair and then black and white the sides.
That would have been great.
Or you could do it with Cap's beard too, just black and white his
Loki,
beard out.
there's a chance he's coming back.
How many of these did they do? My God.
I wasn't even sure who that was.
Maria Hill and Mbaku got dissed on the poster. Yeah.
Give me the thighs.
Shuri, come on.
Now I tried to look. I'm not sure. I think these might be like the big bus shelter posters.
Probably.
But
Oh, yeah.
very strange if you just like, oh, a Wong poster, or oh, a Happy Hogan poster.
You know what? I'm going
Like,
to check it out at every bus stop that I'm
Yeah.
at this month, which will be approximately 105.
Yeah, it'll just
I
be
think
weird.
that's how you confirm how nice the neighborhood you are. Is in like, are you in a neighborhood that had Cap poster money, or are you in the neighborhood that had Wong poster money, or like Happy Hogan poster money?
Do they geotag like which ones go where? And they're like,
Oh, yeah.
Chances are,
Studio City, that feels like a Scarlet Witch territory.
Chances are, if you have a nice grocery store and the crappy grocery store in your area, like the nice grocery store is going to have all your heavy hitter posters.
Yeah, I'm telling you now, the bus
Yeah.
stop I wait for to get here is definitely a Happy Hogan bus stop. Like, for sure.
I feel like Favreau, he kind of made this whole thing happen, so give the guy a poster,
Yeah.
Yeah.
He earned it. He did. I was glad we got a Valkyrie. But yeah, I was scrolling through all of them on Twitter, and it was just funny to be like, A-lister, 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 raccoon, A-lister.
Oh.
Voiced by Bradley Cooper.
True, true.
But it was Tessa Thompson, I guess, was like they had not revealed she was in the movie until that poster. She was not in the credit block on the one sheet. So this was like, okay, she's in the movie. Valkyrie's alive. We're gonna not ignore what the hell happened to everyone at the beginning of Infinity War.
Now, are we confirming? Is that confirmation
Well,
that
who
they're in
knows?
it, or just confirmation
That
that
they're
sure she
alive.
lived or she
I'm
died?
gonna guess she's in the movie. Although, as much as I was excited to see that poster, I'm also guessing she's in the movie for three to 5 minutes.
Sure.
I'm
Which I-
guessing-
like an
I bet
X-
Thor's gonna be like, "How's it going, Valkyrie? Good." And
Yeah, like an X-Men the animated series
Yeah.
cameo
Yeah.
where War Machine would just fly by in the background.
Korg might say like one funny thing in the background, and then we're gonna move on.
Yeah. Piss
Fun
off,
fact,
Stone.
War Machine
Do what?
in the animated series was Uncle Phil.
That's right.
Yeah.
Uncle Phil was so
Uncle Phil
good
was
at
great.
doing
He
was
stuff.
also the
He was
Shredder.
also the Shredder, yeah.
I did not know any of these
Yes.
things.
Yes.
Uncle Phil was the voice. Now, when you watch the old Ninja Turtles cartoon, once you know it, listen for it. It is James Avery. Uncle Phil is the voice of the Shredder.
Uncle Phil facts.
And airplane star Robert Hayes was Iron Man alongside
Guys,
him.
what other show where on YouTube where a bunch of dorks talk about movie things are you gonna get cool Uncle Phil facts out of an Avengers poster tangent? I don't know. Hit that bell.
Can we get an Uncle Phil fact like graphic?
Phil facts.
Phil facts. Phil
Strike it
facts.
anytime.
So Fridays we do we call it Fan Fridays because we're very creative. And what Fan Fridays is if you would like to submit a question for Friday's show, go to the community tab on the Screen Junkies News YouTube page and leave a question on this week's post. That's where we pull all our questions from. Those shows are always really fun. They go in some weird places because you guys ask us some weird stuff. So take a second to go do that today after the show. Go to the community tab on the Screen Junkies News YouTube page and leave your Fan Friday question on this week's post. For example, our third story is a fan question from Luke. Oh, Luke, I'm so sorry. I'm going to kill your last name dead, like Batman. Luke Lashley?
Lashley?
Did my Batman kill? I don't know. Luke asked, do you feel that you need to read a play or a book before seeing the film adaptation? We can open this up to, plays, books, the comic, like...
I mean, I 100% say no, although as someone who's reviewed a lot of things, I would always kind of make sure to put it in there as a qualifier, had I read the book or not. I did always bristle when someone said, if I said I hadn't read the book, then you shouldn't be reviewing it. I'm like, well, no. I think it's important for you to know that, because then you know that I was viewing it through someone who didn't know the story at all. But yeah, I mean, he's just asking you should even see it, and I say, absolutely not. I mean, of course, mileage will vary. I mean, the new Pet Sematary is coming out, and I read that book as a kid, but I haven't read it since. I wanted to reread it before I'd see it. It's probably not going to happen because I don't have time. But I also feel like the movie should stand on its own, right? You know, it's
Yes.
interesting to compare them, but at the same time, the movie should stand on its own.
I agree. I actually try not to, because I feel like if you have an idea in your head of where you think it needs to go, then you're automatically judging the movie by an
Yes.
external means that's not the movie itself.
And also, you shouldn't need study materials to see a movie. Everything you need to know should be there, and because there have been cases where you need to consult a bibliography before you see the movie, and that's not. The movie should give you everything that you need.
Well, and we found that out when we did the Maze Runner. We did the honest trailer for the Maze Runner, and part of the thing is we brought up all of these plot holes in the movie, these things that were just completely unexplained, and like there was a very and Harry Potter, Hunger Games. Anytime we do a book thing and we bring up this thing that the movie has this problem or that problem, there will be a very vocal contingent that's just like, no, because in the books they clearly explain blah blah blah. It's like, I understand that, but the books aren't the movies.
Nope.
Yeah.
And the movie has a
Something
duty
being
to
in the
explain
book
it.
is not an excuse for something to not be in the movie. The
Right.
movie is not the book. You should not have to read the book to understand the movie. And I will still contend that even if something is explained in the book, if it is not included in the movie and the movie suffers because of it, that is a problem with the movie.
Yep.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if it's explained in the book. You need to explain it in the movie. They're two separate things. They should stand alone.
Yeah.
But
Or-
yeah, that's why I try not to read the book. 'Cause I
In
don't
a
want to.
tweet.
Or a tweet. 10 years after the fact.
Sorry, let me vanish this dump I just took. You know, with purely just comic book
true.
stuff, there was, I feel like as a society we've gotten a little better with this, because I feel like early on, because this can get very gatekeepery too, like, did you actually read the thing?
Yes.
A real
Yeah.
fan would have read the thing. And you still get a little bit of that every now and then, where it's like, I bet you didn't even read 50 years worth of comics before going to see that movie, fake
Right.
nerd. We used to do it with like casting, where people would react poorly to casting news. Like, did they even read the books? And it's like, I don't know, probably not, man. They're an actor who got cast for a role.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it works.
It's a job.
The job is acting, it's not reading.
Right.
Yeah, they probably read some for research or whatever. But I feel like we've backed down from that as a fandom society a little bit. I'm trying to think of times where it's helped or hurt. I really like the first two Hellboy movies. I've never read Hellboy. I'm completely divorced from any opinions of the source material, so I really like those movies. I have a lot of friends who love Hellboy, and they're like, those movies are garbage. Those are not Hellboy at all.
Yeah. Well, it's like the people that, I forget which Harry Potter movie it was, but the people that were just furious at that movie because the Society to Protect Elvish Warfare had been cut from the film.
Right,
Which is
right.
like,
Yeah.
you cannot cut spew. That is the key part of the. And I mean, but that to me is like, but the movie. It is completely irrelevant to the movie, superfluous to the movie.
Yeah.
The movie would have been, it's the Tom Bombadil problem. The movie would have been worse for including it, because it is an ancillary plot.
You didn't need an extra half hour of Tom?
That did not impact the overall plot whatsoever. I
Just some more
understand that
singing?
people want Tom Bombadil in the Lord of the Rings movies. Tom Bombadil was yes, a useless character, and but that's just Tolkien wrote little weird side journeys and side quests, and that was Tom Bombadil. But it's the Tom Bombadil problem. Just like, I understand that it's a big part of the book, but in the movie adaptation, it is not salient to anything that
Right,
is included in the
I think it's interesting. We also have sort of an interesting challenge, I'll say, of sort of adaptation culture where we are now, because there's a lot more stuff now, sort of like your comic, your book, or
Yeah.
your whatever gets adapted. It gets adapted. It gets
That's why
adapted.
Us stood out, because it's not based on
Yeah.
anything.
Well, like Harry Potter, for example. I feel like movies can also run into the risk and commit the crime of assuming and hoping that you read the books.
Yes.
So that, for example, the Battle of Hogwarts, you have an emotional impact at the end of the Battle of Hogwarts when you see the dead and the casualties, because you read the books and you spent time with those characters. Whereas someone who maybe went into the movies cold doesn't have that initial like, oh my god, not that person, because the movies didn't do those side characters as much justice, didn't give them as much depth as say the books did.
Yeah, there was even, I mean, in Potter, actually, one thing that really sticks out to me is that sliver of mirror that they never introduced how he got it. And so in the movies, he just has it. And if you read the books, you know how he has it. But it's like, well, that movie, it's on that movie series to explain how he has that in his hands.
Yeah,
right
and
now.
I think that's one of those, because it's interesting because, obviously there used to be a time when the books were done when you would start adapting them, but no more. No. And so now people start adapting them without knowing how the story ends or how someone who might be a smaller part grows and becomes a more consequential part of that story. But the movies can't do that because they didn't establish that person was going to be worth anything in the first movie. Yeah. Game of Thrones has had this problem as well.
Rowling had to keep telling Rickman, like, hang in there, hang in there, hang in there, hang in there, hang in there.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're on the money with Game of Thrones. Because here we have a weird example of the show finishing before it's going to be fascinating reading those books. Like,
if you do.
Never.
If you like,
I've read them all. I don't know
we're
if I'm
never
gonna go back and
we're
read
never
them.
gonna read them.
He's never gonna finish it.
Let's be honest.
but for the few of us that do,
No, I just mean they're not going to exist.
Because they're never going to happen.
I don't mean we're not going to read them when they come out. I mean we're not going to read them because they will never be. They will never exist in this
That's fair.
corporeal
That's completely
plane.
fair.
He ran off with the bag. He done got the bag.
I don't know how you do it because reading them you would just be like, is this a reaction to something you didn't like in the show? Did you do this because they did that? Did you zig because they zagged? I have no idea how you approach that. I really don't. Like, has he just divorced himself from watching what the show's done at all? Does he just live in a little bunker now where he just doesn't write his Game of Thrones books?
Didn't he say he didn't read? He hasn't read what happens? I think he said he hasn't read the ending. Yeah. It's just like, whatever.
I think he has hobbies now, and good for him.
Yeah, he's found some things.
We all need hobbies.
Good. Yeah. He's been shopping for some new fisherman hats, and good for him. Yeah. Good for him.
One of you said something about extra credit, and yeah, I just feel like, and this is kind of going on a tangent of this, but as a huge Star Wars fan who's really liked post episode 7 and 8, I do bristle when people say, oh, well, read this book or comic, and I do read most of the books and comic to explain something better. Like, I always have issues with, they haven't really explained in the movies how the First Order works, how the government works in those movies, and everyone's like, but the explanation's in the books and comics, which is true. But watching the movies, it's like you feel like they should explain that better. And I know this is
First trilogy had a much easier lift where they just go, Evil Empire!
Right.
Rebels!
Or you know what? Then just hand us when we walk in, like, here's your reading list. We'll put an asterisk on the screen and let you
This is
know.
the scroll expanded. This is like a much longer version of the opening scroll.
When we saw Blade Runner 2049, which I think ultimately you didn't need this to understand the movie, but when we went to see it, they handed us a sheet of paper when we walked in that was like,
wow.
The year is 2049. There was a blackout 30 years ago. And there's just like this whole background reading behind the film. But ultimately, though, I don't think it needed it. The movie itself. But they did. They handed it out like a primer, or primer, however you pronounce it. When you walked into the theater, it was never happened before. It was weird. It was super weird.
That's weird.
Very bizarre.
I do get those sometimes when I do junket stuff, just so they can be like, hey, we know you're not going to remember anything you just saw, but we would like you to ask any questions about the actual movie and not about memes. Please stop asking us about memes. And we're all like, but we're going to ask you about the memes, though.
We're going to ask you about
Junkies
memes.
is partially to blame for that.
Yes.
We did it!
When Rian Johnson's Brick came out, a movie I freaking love, I remember going to see it at the ArcLight, and they actually handed out these little glossaries that would explain the slang in the movie. Because again, the movie has this sort of invented slang. Yeah. But I'm like, I feel like I understand, like, oh, here's exactly what they're saying, but the idea is you can kind of get the gist of it, you know?
I didn't need a Kevin Smith guide to Mallrats when I saw Mallrats. I was like, I get these words. Schnickety, schnickety, schnoy.
I think I can interpret what that means. Context clues or everything.
I'm totally good. Guys, we got some cool things for you to watch. We've got a Dumbo review coming up. Charting focusing on Us came out yesterday. It's a great episode. The Honest Trailer and the Honest Trailer commentaries for every Tim Burton movie dropped today. Please give those a check. And again, we'll see you guys at WonderCon on Friday. We're going to be preparing a new Honest Trailer. We'll see you guys there. Bye.
Farewell.